Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fan Fuel Motorsports Podcast. This is the podcast where fans feel talk about motorsport. You can see today I'm not joined by any of my normal co-hosts, but I have Elliott Hicks here from In Between Media's Back Road Podcast. Just want to welcome you in tonight, and we're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff. So, how you been doing this week?
Doing pretty well. Sorry that we can't have the rest of the crew here with us, but I think that we'll have fun hamming it up here, talking some silly season and some Poc-OH-NO.
Yeah, so let's get into that Poc-OH-NO stuff. I kind of wanted to use the intro period to call it untimely demises because there seemed to be a lot of that this weekend. I just want to hit on a couple of them before we get into the real raw stuff of what happened on Sunday. But I thought it was funny. Charles Leclerc in Formula One, he just was in the lead and threw it all away in France. If you're a Formula One fan, you saw that. We saw a turnover, a flip on the front straightaway of Poc-OH-NO, and that was wild. Did you expect ever to see that violent of a crash at Poc-OH-NO?
Yeah, that was definitely pretty nuts. I mean, we've seen some hard hits at Poc-OH-NO. I remember Elliott Sadler had like the entire front of his car knocked off on the backstretch just because there's so many weird walls and different things there. But that was just a tough situation. They brought up a lot on the NBC broadcast about expanding out that pit wall, and that ended up being a saving grace because, Jeb's car heading down that way could have flipped onto the pit road wall and passed that barrier. So it looked rough, but luckily he was okay. And it probably saved a lot of people from getting messed up in the pits. And his decision, I know that had to have been tough. Do I run into this pit barrier? Do I go down pit road? Or do I just take this hit that's coming to me? He took the hit that was coming to him and had a little bit of trouble there while he had to wait to get flipped over. But I think that was a tough one for sure. Glad everyone was all right. There were no injuries.
Yeah, and after watching different stuff, I know they mentioned some on the Sunday broadcast for pre-race about some guys hitting the wall on pit road with helmets and stuff flying, and even the Martin crash on pit road. It was good that he was on the track doing damages and not hitting personnel and equipment in pit road. But that was supposed to be the biggest explosion of the weekend. It wound up not being. We'll talk about one of the drivers a little bit later in more detail. But right now, I want to get into, we'll just say the Chastain incident. As a Denny fan, I can't really say anything first, so I'll let Elliott take the lead on what happened and what his thoughts are, and I'll just bounce off of that.
Well, so the big topic of conversation here was it payback or was it not payback? And, I'm all, after what happened at Martinsville last fall, I'm all for anything bad happening to Denny Hamlin. So that stuff was okay for me. And I think that with this Hamlin and Chastain incident, there was a big fight about it on the Dale Jr. download. I'm sure other podcasts have been talking about it as well. I think that it can be both. It can be payback without being the end-all, be-all in payback. Hamlin racing for the lead with 20 to go or however many laps there were. He sees that that's Chastain up there, and he may not be thinking, okay, I'm going to punt this guy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that to knock him out. But he's not going to do him any favors up there. He's going to give him just enough room for the car and not really anything extra. And so, I think that it a little bit was payback because he had that in his head. I'm not going to give this guy a break for sure. Whereas if it was Kevin Harvick or a teammate, he would have given a little more slack. But I don't think it's the end-all, be-all payback. I think that we will see something a little more defined if Hamlin gets the opportunity.
Yeah, I think you got a good point there. For me, the tongue-in-cheek of who, what car, that kind of stuff that they were saying in the post-race interviews in the media center is kind of where I'm at with that. Basically, just as you described it. As far as he knows, if there's a one car there, is he really there? There's just a little bit less room or he's going to give just enough room for the wall for there to be maybe a car there. I don't see that as payback. I just see that as Denny being very aware of who he's racing around, kind of like what Elliott said. And I think it got blown way out of proportion because it wasn't a dirty move. It's nothing that we haven't seen at any other type of racetrack, short track, road course, whatever.
I thought it was extremely similar to what happened with Chase Elliott and Corey LaJoie. Chase Elliott didn't necessarily give room for Corey LaJoie to pass him, but, he didn't intentionally smack him into the wall.
And I'll even go off to say that the Chase Elliott one was worse because Denny just faded up there. It's not like he just jerked up there to block.
Yeah, he at least gave him room for the race car, even if there was no margin for error there. With LaJoie, there was no lane. He just got shoved.
Yeah. So people blow stuff out of proportion when it's a Toyota driver, much less the most hated Toyota driver at the moment.
Right. Well, I think also just any feud in NASCAR, and everyone points back to that boys have at it. People are going to go crazy over every little thing that happens.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's racing. You earn what you get in racing. And Denny thinks that he's not really earned some of the way that Ross has treated him over this course of this season. So he's going to give right back what he thinks that Ross is owed. So
yeah, and Ross knew immediately. He was like, "Yeah, like I had that coming to me. If I raced smarter a month ago, that doesn't happen." So
he knew. Well, he knows that there's 10 more races, and he's got chances at a championship that he won't be winning this year. There's no way that the only way that a situation arises where Denny Hamlin doesn't continue to squeeze him like that or compromise his own self points wise is if he's in a position where he has to perform during the playoffs. Otherwise, Ross is you're not making that round one, buddy. That's all I can say.
Well, I mean, 16 driver playoffs, there's usually 2 or 3 not so great drivers in there. I think maybe he'll get out of round 1 just because of having the sheer amount of playoff points, but
yeah,
round 2 you start to get there, then you really start to whittle out some good guys.
Yeah. Well, I can probably go ahead and say with a hard bet that the 99 will make it farther than his teammate, just because the 99 doesn't have any enemies out there. Maybe Michael McDowell, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Was there any controversy after the race, though, Elliott? I don't think there was. Or am I missing
That's the controversy. I don't think there was as far as I know, there was no blow up or fight or anything.
Yeah, nothing to do with cars or pieces of plastic or anything.
I mean, I couldn't tell you. As soon as Hamlin crossed the finish line, I switched over to something else. But as far as I know,
exactly.
Nobody threw a beer can on the track or anything like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. So the old Bill France thing of knowing who you saw won by the time you get to your car thing. I mean, we don't do that anymore.
You were referring to that. That was a pretty obvious one that I kind of went over my head. I thought you were talking about more like fights or anything.
No. I'm talking about the controversy behind post-race tech. And I labeled this in our notes, Denny, Kyle Busch, and Mickey Mouse, because there was a lot of controversy about this win. First of all, before we kind of dig deep into what's going on, how did you feel about all that happened?
It was just kind of one of those oh crap moments. I didn't even see the tweet at first. I had to have Jared, a mutual friend of ours and Fan Fuel host, sent me a message like, "Hey, did you see the news?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" I go and look at Bob Pockrass's Twitter. Saw they were both DQ'd, and I mean, it's not a surprise necessarily to see the winner DQ'd. I didn't realize it was the first time at the Cup level, just because we've seen it happen multiple times at the Xfinity and the truck level. But it just was the perfect storm because it was both 1 and 2 that was DQ'd. Those guys were both teammates. Those guys are both controversial drivers. And then it was another controversial driver who's gotten his share of good breaks this season that ended up getting the win from that situation. So had it been, Christopher Bell and Keselowski and Alex Bowman, as those 3 drivers, it wouldn't have made quite as much of a stink, but it was just a perfect storm brewing. Absolutely. And plus the fact that they were DQ'd from some little piece of tape on the nose. I don't really know, but these guys are serious with the next gen, as we saw with the penalty to McDowell midweek also. Take them seriously.
And I don't know what to say. I mean, as a Denny Hamlin fan, I know I'm pissed off. I know Jared was pissed off because he, of course, is a massive Kyle Busch fan. But for me, it was, like you said, just that little piece of tape. This is something that I don't think looks good for NASCAR, but unless you're a Chase Elliott fan. Because those guys are going hard on social media about them cheating Toyotas and all that good stuff. But I have to ask you, you brought up when you said a little piece of tape. When they said you can't manipulate parts, when you see the Keselowski stuff, when you see the McDowell stuff, they manipulated parts.
Mm-hmm.
Is a piece of plastic that is, I think they said 0.02 of an inch thick, is that really manipulating a part because it's sitting on top of it?
Right. Well, I don't think it's manipulating a part, and I think NASCAR knows that too, because they didn't get hit with 100-point penalties, $100,000 fines, suspensions. It was just a race disqualification. So there is a difference here. Even this McDowell penalty coming out, it kind of makes it easier to group all of these together when they are very different things. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of any car, much less the next gen car. I don't know what this piece of tape does to potentially have a competitive advantage, but there has to be something there. I don't imagine that NASCAR is just going to DQ their top 2 cars at the Cup level for the first time since 1960 for something that isn't some sort of significant issue.
Well, I guess I could agree with that, but also Golden Boy got the win. So
that makes it so much worse just because it's another Chase Elliott win. And anybody who's not a Chase Elliott fan in NASCAR right now is so tired of seeing Chase Elliott win races.
Yeah.
I'm even a Hendrick Motorsports fan. I would be fine if Chase Elliott didn't win another race the whole season. So
I think it's the way that he's won the last 2 races. And it's like this track record this is the 3rd time this has happened. It feels like there should have been something happening differently. Because you got the rain out at Circuit of the Americas.
Right.
That the racetrack started drying, the rain stopped, and they called the race, I guess, for TV. Then you've got the Atlanta weekend where we see the move, and it was kind of a dipshit move, and NASCAR, had the yellow throne and all the other controversy that we talked about on the 36-hour podcast about that. And now you've got this. It's like a lot of us are sitting here wondering why we defended NASCAR all these years for not throwing races because Dale Jr. existed. And he didn't ever win a championship. He lost a championship due to NASCAR. But now we're just sitting here like, this guy's getting too lucky too many times with non-calls or calls like that. That's just me.
I think you sent out the first tweet promoting the show about putting the tinfoil hat on. I can see it on your head right there.
Yeah,
if this was something that happened more commonly, it's just been a relatively recent string of lucky events. I'm a fan of a driver who had 4 wins last season and probably only earned one of them. Late pit strategy, a flat tire in the final corner, and, a late restart at Martinsville High. I have no idea how he gets away from 2 guys who had to win to get into the Final Four. So I guess maybe because of that experience last season with a driver that's not the most popular in NASCAR, that doesn't have the fan base that Chase Elliott or even Denny Hamlin or Kyle Busch has, that, it's one thing if this happens 2 more times this season and Chase Elliott happens to back into wins, to use a Kyle Busch phrase. But for now, the tinfoil hat's on the desk here. It's not quite on yet.
Well, maybe just because we have different opinions of Chase Elliott, maybe my tinfoil hat's on, because when I see you saying stuff about Alex Bowman, I'm like, well, yeah, you're right, but also those weren't NASCAR calls, and 2 of the last 3 were. Yeah. So it's like, I'm gonna keep it on.
Right.
But
here's my final thought on this: that if NASCAR was truly in the business of rigging races, would you have seen its most popular driver that put it on the map go 4 years without a win? Would you have seen him go without a title?
That's what I'm saying.
Would you have seen
Danica
Patrick never win a race? Would you have seen Suarez take 3 years to win? It's that sort of deal, that there's so many opportunities to have things go perfectly for them to set it up that didn't happen.
And I was sitting right there in that chair on that bench with you until the last 3 or so weeks of NASCAR, and I'm just like,
and ready. It's a worrying trend, but also it could just be that, hey, this guy's running well. He's lucky to be in these positions when NASCAR maybe has a quick trigger finger on things.
Well, he found the replication tool for that golden horseshoe that that Jimmy Johnson had. But anyways, we'll get off of this and we'll get on to our main topic. So, interestingly enough, Elliott approached me about doing this show, I would say probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe a couple weeks ago. I don't know. I can't tell time. But he was like, we should come on the show and talk about silly season stuff. I've got a lot of wild ideas and crazy things that we could talk about. And we both started building notes on our own. And within a day or 2, the news breaks that Tyler Reddick is signed with 2020 in 2024 with 2311. And I was like, well, damn, that just shakes up half of my list. I don't know how much it affected you, but I guess we can start there since that was really the first move of silly season, even though it's only going to be impacting us, I guess, in 2024.
Maybe. I mean, we'll have to see. And the funny thing is that a lot of these ideas that I thought of when we first brought this up have now kind of been pushed into the mainstream a little more. So these are things that you probably have heard already, but things that, maybe we had thought of before they were kind of in the mainstream. But for 2311, another big change that's happened in between is this Kurt Busch concussion scenario. I was being a Dale Jr. fan. I saw how rough it was with the concussions. We don't know how specific Kurt's incident is. We don't know if he had the same lengthy history as Dale Jr. did with concussions, where this one's going to be particularly bad. But I think the easiest path here with Tyler Reddick already waiting in the wings, that you just have Kurt Busch go into a retirement or semi-retirement after this season. Maybe if he was on the Today Show to promote the Chicago Street Course, if he really wants to do that, you can put him in an extra Gibbs car or an extra 2311 car, have him run a part-time schedule. And then it'd be relative. Michael Jordan can pull out his pocketbook, give some compensation to Childress, and get him over there a year earlier to run that 45 car. Because I think that 2311 is going to have that third car and maybe eventually the fourth car down the line, but I don't think it comes anytime soon. Denny Hamlin has seemed very cautious about expanding this team until he sees what this team cut is from the new TV deal and things like that. So I don't think he's going to get the next charter that comes on the market. I don't think the third car comes for another 2 or 3 seasons. I think that the best bet, Kurt Busch steps out, is because he's that way. Seeing what's happened in sports with concussions, especially in NASCAR, because you had Dale Jr. get beat up a whole bunch, missed those races in 2012, missed half a season in 2016, and then coming back in 2017 was just not competitive whatsoever that season.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to some of these Xfinity drivers a little bit later, but in the meantime, Ty Gibbs is filling in for Kurt Busch. He filled in at Poc-OH-NO. They just announced a couple hours ago that he will be also behind the wheel this weekend at Indy and at Indianapolis. So I think the thought was because Kurt seemed to be that way, that he was going to go through 2024. So I'll go ahead and agree with you with Reddick going over there potentially early next year. But I'm going to have to disagree with you about the checks getting cut because we saw an announcement teaser, I guess, for the 2nd of August that has been deducted to be the silhouette of Austin Hill. And I think there might be some interesting stuff going on in that RCR camp because they were not very happy. The tweet that they sent out was I think they said this could not have come at
the timing of this announcement couldn't be any worse. And so my thing with that is if the timing couldn't be any worse, how do you have an announcement ready less than a month later, maybe 2 weeks later, I forget how long ago it was, that you already have a guy in your cup car for when he's gone? I think that this is – if you take this as meaning that RCR has their seat filled already for when Reddick leaves, I think that's a little far-fetched. I think that they're going to have a third car in a couple of races to get Austin Hill some cup experience to maybe bump him up. They have 2 very hot young prospects that did really well in the truck series, didn't have that path to Xfinity in Sheldon Creed and Austin Hill. I think eventually they come up, but the guy that I'm looking at for that 8 car, I think is Noah Gragson. I think he would be just the absolute perfect fit. I think that he and Childress would match up perfectly. And I mean, I would be not that that may be a slap in the face to those guys like Creed and Hill, but they've had their moments where they've really struggled. And Noah Gragson is cup ready, and being at JRM, I don't think he's their cup driver if they go to cup, and he's got no room at the end at Hendrick. So currently, I don't see the JRM to cup thing being for anything other than a tease at this point, because it seems like as much as Junior wants it to happen, it's not really something that he wants to pay $20 million for to get 2 charters. Yeah. My biggest thing with RCR, I think that they may be cutting ties with Tyler Reddick at the end of this season. And you bringing up Noah Gragson makes for me a lot of sense because partners in Black Rifle Coffee Company and Bass Pro Shops are also partners with the RCR team. Right. They are also partners with Colleague Racing, technically, who he drives for in the Cup Series. So it seems to me like that would be a very smart move. But I don't know. Am I alone in thinking that Tyler Reddick will not be in that car next year? I don't think he can be. I mean, we've seen with these lame duck years, I don't know that anybody really stays in the same place. You had Casey Kane announce he was going to Hendrick in 2012. He went to Red Bull. He didn't stay with Gillette Evernham or whatever it was at that time. And then who was the other recent example? Technically, Alex Bowman had that lame duck year. He couldn't get a ride. There was another. It's not coming to me right now.
Well,
the other example.
Clint Boyer.
Yeah.
Scott.
That was a little different because Michael Waltrip Racing didn't exist that year that he was stuck with H. Scott, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that one was a little tough. But yeah, this is why I think it just matches up perfectly. I feel terrible for Kurt Busch this is happening now, but I think it could be a wake-up call for him to say, hey, they've got this guy ready. I can pick and choose the fun races I want to go into to help them eventually build their third team at 2311. I can pick the fun races. I can get in them. I can compete, and I don't have to go run the crappy races.
Yeah. Well, that kind of knocks out my part of the RCR. Other than some questions that we had in our group chat, I would have much rather Colton and Nathan been here to say some stuff because they seem to think that there's something going on with the 3-car as well in the next year or so.
I do have that. I have a little section of notes here with Creed and Hill about RCR. I'm sure he really enjoys the racing side of things, but at some point, does he realize maybe I'm not so competitive? I'm getting older. I've got this focus on the reality show now. I can build my brand without necessarily having to be in that seat. So maybe that's how you get Creed or Hill into the Cup Series is you have Austin Dillon become the face of RCR. We're seeing all these ownership transitions take place now. Keselowski at Roush, you're going to have the younger guys take over Hendrick, things like that. The Gibbs tradition is going to be passed down eventually. So I think that maybe Austin Dillon steps out of the 3-car at one point. Maybe they keep the 3. Maybe they end up renumbering it because, Creed, Hill, or whoever is not family. I don't think they put Ty Dillon in there, even though he's leaving the 42 car. That's another one. Maybe one of these young RCR guys takes that seat. I don't know how aligned the Petty GMS and RCR partnership would be if it exists, but yeah, maybe Austin Dillon could be something that opens up and he realizes, hey, I don't need to drive this 3-car to build my brand. I've had my fun. I wanted these Honda 500. I'm never going to win a title. Let's go have some fun in this ownership role.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Apparently, he's making moves behind the scenes already. I'm pretty sure he is the one that put together the reality TV show. And he also is the one that put the 3-car on track in Talladega with Jeffrey Earnhart earlier this year. So he's already making decisions for the RCR shop and brand. So I think I would much rather see him in that role because while he does have instances where he's consistent, I think there's more talent in the pool in the Xfinity Series that could make that company go farther.
And you could still have a situation where Austin Dillon brings that 3-car out of the garage for the Daytona 500 and a couple other races for these last couple of years. If he decides to move that way.
Yeah, and it's not something we haven't seen with the Allmendinger stuff, and what we're going to see starting, I guess, really next year with the Project 91 car, because I'm assuming they'll do more than one race from what it seems like. So that'll be cool. I guess, where do you want to go next?
I was about to say, is it time to open the Kyle Busch can of worms, or do we want to kind of poke around the other rides? And then
do we want to take the Kyle Busch one last? I think that's the biggest one because that's the biggest one for the sport, in my opinion. So we can skip around with these Xfinity drivers and see who we want to go there. And then there's some other guys that Jared got a list for us up whose contracts are up at the end of 2023 as well.
Yes, there are a lot of different ways to go with this. I brought up the 42 car, so I guess we can start there. I think that's more interesting than people think. Normally you would consider Petty to be more of a, not quite a backmarker team, but like a C tier to C minus tier ride.
Right.
But, it seems like that, GMS had a lot of success in the Truck Series. They've got the brand and backing of Richard Petty, which always helps with a little bit of sponsorship money. They could be right on the brink of being a competitive team. Eric Jones is talking about re-signing there. And I think that's why Ty Dillon is out, maybe because old Grandpappy over there in Welcome, North Carolina is not giving them any money anymore for him. I don't know if he was, but potentially. I think you could see some guys with upside go there. A couple of guys I have on this list, Ryan Preece, if he gets ducked out of the 10 car. Eric Almirola is currently a will he or won't he retire thing. He's brought up, maybe I'm thinking about it. If the 41 car were to open up for a guy we may not have just mentioned, Cole Custer could be without a ride. Maybe he slips in there to stay in Cup. Zane Smith is a guy. He's done really well in the Truck Series. He's not tied down anywhere. He's not going to follow Front Row Motorsports up the ladder. And maybe Josh Berry could be a seat for that, because I don't think I think that JRM's Cup team, it would be too risky to start with him. If he'd be a Cup Series rookie, he'd be relatively unproven. I know Junior loves him, but I don't know that he'd have the funding. I think it'd be super risky to start there, and I think JRM could get somebody better with more Cup winning experience, which we can get to with some of these other guys as well. You never know. He could be a guy that slots in that right.
So that's interesting that you bring that up, because Josh Berry wasn't even on my list to go to a Cup team. And I don't think that you're correct in saying that he wouldn't be the guy to bring up the Cup. I'm
not saying it wouldn't happen, because like I said, Junior loves him. I just think it would be super risky to go with a dude whose best winning experience is in late models and a few Xfinity races. It's one thing if he races Xfinity for 2 more years, goes out, wins a title, and competes for another, then it's a little different. But
so I think just from his sheer ownership and crew chiefing roles in the late models, as well as how long he sat there and gotten the talent in a car with a similar feel, as it were, when Junior talked about it when he took the test as the next gen. I think that would be a pretty good option as maybe a veteran unseasoned driver.
True.
I don't know if we've ever really had that, but I could see that being someone of maybe even the same skill set type level as an AJ Allmendinger running for you full time. I think that would be a very good driver coach as well to a young talent that you wanted to bring in. And if JRM comes to Cup, he could possibly, just based on his own notoriety, bring someone else. Who's to say that Bowman doesn't go because he's one of his favorite guys on the Cup grid too.
While we're on that, I've got him as part of the whole Kyle Busch can of worms. But if you were, the Kyle Busch to Hendrick thing got brought up a little bit. If you were to kick out a Hendrick driver, I think with Alex Bowman, all of his cards are in the Ally Bank right now.
Right.
He's no pun intended, but also very intended there. I don't think a big sponsor like Ally is going to go with Kyle Busch for their brand. And, but it's a question of how long do they stick with Bowman? Would they move to another team with Bowman? Would we, their Ally's the sponsor, the Dale Jr. download. He's designed the Ally 400 scheme the last couple of years. Would we see both of them jump over to the JRM Cup effort after a few years if Hendrick decides, hey, Bowman's okay, but we got this really freaking good upside driver or this good veteran or whatever? Could we see the Ally 8 car, the 88 car over at JRM? Could be a possibility.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I think could happen. I just don't know how. I know
Junior loves Josh Berry, but Bowman, he's got 6 Cup wins. He's made it into the round of 8. He's consistently up there. He's inconsistent a lot of times, but it's a good, solid crew. Junior got him that ride, essentially. That run at Phoenix in 2016 got him that ride. Otherwise, they could have gone with a myriad of other options at the time.
Yeah. I just don't think that they go to Cup without 2 charters. I think realistically, we could get into a charter discussion later because I've got ideas about that stuff.
I was thinking that it would start at 1. I don't think that he would go to 2, but then I see what you're saying there, that does it make sense to go 1 and not just have a second one?
If this was still Gen 6 era, definitely. Just like Trackhouse, just like 2311 did. But at this moment with the next gen car, I think it's more beneficial to have 2 charters than just 1.
Right. And now that you mention it, I think even Denny Hamlin or somebody said that if you have 1, it costs this much. If you have 2, it's a little bit less to run a race team, but then 3, it starts to get more expensive. So
right. So
it's just that big charter acquisition that's just a pain in the ass for everyone.
Yeah. I think that at this point, it's going to be all decided on whether or not Front Row Motorsports continues to want to compete. Mm-hmm. I think those 2 charters are the only ones that will ever be on the table. Maybe JTG Doherty, maybe. Well, but it's it's probably going to go to Colleague if that happens. Maybe the petty GMS ones. I don't know.
There's a few others you're forgetting. Rick Ware still has at least 2 charters, if not more.
Rick Ware's not getting rid of his charters.
I think Rick Ware loves this racing deal, but he's got places in other teams. He's got to realize that even in this era, he's probably not going to be competitive.
So he's not here to be competitive. He's here to make money.
Right. The best way they can make money is with these charter prices so inflated. Sell everything you got, keep 1, have some fun with it. Maybe it goes up. Keep being in the charter acquisition game. And there's one, I have a controversial take on Spire Motorsports that I think the only reason they're in this is for the money. I feel bad for Corey LaJoie. I feel bad for whoever they have in that 77 car that's the case, but that's the case. They're in this for charters. I think that they own 3, I think, or maybe just 2, and releasing at least one out before. But I think that as soon as they can jump and get a ridiculous amount of money for charters, I think that team is done, And Live Fast is around, BJ McLeod and Tiff. Do they realize, man, we can't do this either? Front Row's another team I had on my list. How long do they stick around as well?
Yeah. I just know there was talks with 2311 initially to get charters from there. So
I do remember that.
I think they may be the ones that you could possibly be like, okay, here's what we got. But I don't think that happens till 2024.
With Front Row, they've got one really big reason to stay in the Cup Series with at least one car, and her name is Hailie Deegan. Because I think that Deegan gets bumped up regardless of her performance in the Truck Series, which has been subpar so far. And I won't go too far down the Hailie Deegan rabbit hole. I have issues with her that are unrelated to things like that. But I think that if she can show even the slightest bit of encouraging performance in the Truck Series, that she could go up there, because he's with David Gilliland Racing right now. There's obviously the connection there. And, we've seen it with other drivers, that they come up maybe a little quickly into the Front Row Motorsports seats, like Todd Gilliland. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see, even if there's only one left, if McDowell decides to dip or retire, or if they throw him out on the street, that they keep at least one charter just to make the money, just to make the Hailie Deegan money, get all the attention, even if it's just for a year or 2.
I didn't see that coming, honestly.
See, we got a few wild cards in here.
That could go. So I think the only other really, because we kind of know what. We kind of know what's going on with Ty Gibbs. We kind of know.
Joe Retro, I do agree with you that nothing in her driver performance has shown that she should go to the Cup Series. But Danica Patrick didn't do all that well in Xfinity and ran in the Cup Series for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think that Hailie Deegan, she'll have a few good runs. People will say, oh, she's every week on Fox, it doesn't matter how well she's running. It's, oh, Michael Waltrip, oh, Hailie Deegan's learned so much today. Look how well she's doing, So, yeah. I mean, it's whether I like or dislike her, which is completely irrelevant here. I think that she could very easily come up, make money for Front Row, more money than they've got off of anything other than McDowell's Daytona 500 win in 10 years plus of racing.
Yeah, I mean, then that's some people you just got to play the game, whether we like it or not. So, but moving on, we know where Ty Gibbs is going. He's probably going to get that 19.
Either the 19 or the 18.
We'll get to that later. He's probably going to get the 19 in 2024.
I think after 2023, I think Truex is done, and I think Kevin Harvick is probably retired too after 2023.
Yeah. So we'll go to our last one, and that is John Hunter Nemechek. What is he doing? Is he going back to Xfinity? Is he coming back to Cup? What is he doing with the cataclysm that is going to be whatever comes from the KFB stuff? Where could he go like before then?
If Kyle Busch stays with Gibbs, everything stays the same. I think he might be okay sticking down there in that truck, in the Ford truck for another year, and then wait to bump, because I think he bumps up to Xfinity as soon as Ty Gibbs goes to Cup. That you see John Hunter take that ride full time, because that was the plan. He left Front Row. He's like, I'm going to go all the way back down and get myself in with a big team. Because eventually, maybe it's when Denny retires or goes to 2311, you see John Hunter in a Gibbs ride in Cup. It's very possible. But I think he definitely takes that full-time ride whenever Ty leaves it. Now, if Kyle Busch goes somewhere else, that could open up a few different things. I guess it would still end up being the same thing, because he's a Toyota pipeline driver, that he would end up going to that Xfinity car, because there'd be a Cup car open from Ty Gibbs.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. Let's go to...
At least Bubba Wallace has won something. Regardless of what you think about that win to Talladega, at least he's won something.
Yeah. Let's go ahead
and go. I'll give her all the credit in the world.
Let's go ahead and go to the most important piece of the silly season puzzle. This could be the wackiest thing. Mm-hmm. I think none of us really thought that this would ever be an issue, but the 18 car might not be filled with Kyle Busch come next year.
It's the biggest thing since Dale Jr. left EEI. I mean, we kind of saw that one coming a little more. This was more of a blunt force thing after M&M Mars decided, hey, we're going to pull out. We've got one of the bigger sponsorship deals in the Cup Series right now, and we're done with it. So that makes it really, really difficult.
So option number one, let's talk about it. Staying in his seat. What does that do for the sport? Well, for me, as a Toyota fan, that leaves KBM in the Toyota fold, and that's the biggest part of this whole thing is if Toyota loses Kyle Busch, they lose Kyle Busch Motorsports.
Right.
And for me, if you lose the best truck team in the business over the last decade and a half, you're losing prospects, you're losing probably sponsorship money. I don't know how many crew guys are you losing that are, out there training to get to the Cup Series one day. You're just losing a lot of depth, and Toyota doesn't already doesn't have multiple teams everywhere either. It's JGR, right. it's and then you've got KBM and
does ThorSport they flip-flopped,
ThorSport, we don't really know what they're doing.
That's an interesting team because ThorSport has gone kind of down the way of getting the lifers. They've had Matt Crafton forever. I think that Ben Rhodes is totally content being a truck lifer at this point. Are they ready or even willing to become the Toyota development prospect team and throw out multiple of their lifers if they had to? Does Grant Enfinger run there?
Definitely not. Okay, Dustin is probably out there with Colton at Frontier Days in Wyoming. They're getting hammered, getting hot and sweaty in the sun and watching some people wrangle, animals. I don't know. I'm not a cowboy. They are.
Thanks for tuning in, even just to throw a comment in. Hope you're having fun watching the dang old rodeo out there.
Yeah. So this is, man, as a Toyota fan, if Kyle Busch doesn't re-sign with Joe Gibbs, it's going to be very, very disappointing and very, very bad, in my opinion. So that's what I'll say.
It's super easy because then you get Ty Gibbs in right away. I'm sure he's Cup ready. Maybe he struggles a little bit, but it wouldn't surprise me if he won one of his first 10 races as a full-time driver.
Right.
He won his first Xfinity start. The kid's done nothing but win. We've seen a little more maturing from him. He's not quite as ridiculous as he was early on. That's yet to be completely eradicated, I'm sure. But hey, Kyle Busch was a bit of a hothead when they brought him in, and that wasn't a problem. So if you're gonna get your grandson in Grandpappy's car there, that could really work. I think the biggest guy with the TRD development is where does Chandler Smith go? If Kyle Busch leaves Toyota, I think he's the one guy that could step up to one of these Xfinity deals that would open up from this, that, or the other, or things like that. I don't know that, what do they have? Drew Dollar and the other guy, I can't think of his name, runs 51 sometimes. I think Chandler Smith. He's the biggest prospect that Toyota could lose. Whether he's any good or not, I'm not sure that we know for sure yet. But he could.
I don't know. I mean, the effect of them losing him, like you said, John Hunter Nemechek would go to Xfinity.
I think that makes the most sense. And they may decide to bump Chandler Smith up there. They may say, "Hey, John Hunter, we like you. Thanks for doing this. This kid's got more upside. He's a Toyota guy. He's getting this right."
Are they going to put Drew Dollar full time in the 51? Can they afford that?
Well, but I mean, what happens to all these other Toyota guys if Kyle Busch Motorsports swaps to a different manufacturer? It's not about full time in the 51. It's about where the hell do you put them?
You're right.
You throw a bunch of money at Al Neese to get them to be a Toyota team or something like that. I have no idea.
I don't know.
It's a question of where do you put these guys if there's no KBM?
Do they just get rid of the truck program?
I don't think they can. I think they do have a lot of upside.
You've got Rhodes and Crafton, but are they really a good 4-car team to be doing that? I mean.
Right. I don't think ThorSport's willing. I think this just came to my head. Somebody like Neese, he's running Chevys right now with no pipeline to Cup, no factory sport, anything like that. And then if you can convince him to do that and convince Carson Hocevar to stay. Again, this is all off the cuff. I had a little bit of Hocevar notes, but that could work out perfectly to not only still have a Toyota truck team, still have some prospects, but then get another one in the fold in Hocevar, who I think has the most upside of anybody in the truck series potentially right now.
Yeah,
that could be really big if that happens. But
that's standard.
We're really getting down the rabbit hole. Tinfoil hats.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: Carson Hocevar is the only person in the truck series that I could see winning a championship in Cup.
He's got the most upside right now, and the biggest thing is he hasn't won a race yet. And I don't know if that's because Neese isn't good enough anymore to win races that everyone else has caught up to them, or if there's something with Hocevar, or if he's just ridiculously unlucky. But once he gets that checkered flag, I think all the doors open for him. I don't know where he goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even know that I have a team in my notes here for him to go to. No, I don't have anybody specific.
I don't know.
He's got potential.
Absolutely. But I think let's go the lesser likely of the other two manufacturers. And that's a homecoming with Hendrick.
There are a few options here, and I think there's a good option with each of the three manufacturers for him to go to. But we can start with so you said the Hendrick deal is what we want to talk about first?
Yeah, let's go to that. I don't think that this is very likely. I think this is the least likely. So
no, it would really surprise me. Not that Rick Hendrick has come out and said we don't mind using Hendrick cars for the full season on Kyle Larson. We want our brand out there. Eventually, that money kind of dries up, and if the problem is finding sponsorship with Kyle Busch, where's he going to? Is he going to get more sponsorship being in Hendrick? I doubt it. We talked about Ally and Bowman. I don't think Ally has Kyle Busch represent them. The 24 has had 4 or 5 different sponsors in the car, and they're going to have another one in a Cronus coming on for the Indy Road course. And now I'm sure if you've pivoted and said, hey, we're going to put Kyle Busch in the Hendrick cars number 25, and we're going to have Larson in the 5, and we're going to sell sponsorship for him, that it could work. I'm sure that 2 or 3 companies would step up, and Larson could get close to a full season from those 3. Just hypothetical companies I'm plucking out of the air, maybe people to help with his dirt racing. I don't know. But it's possible. But I just don't know that the seats out. Who are you throwing out? Who are you taking out of Hendrick? Sure as hell is it got to be Gold Boy Chase Elliott. Not going to be Larson.
Not.
Bowman's got the only full-time sponsor left in NASCAR right now.
Right.
And William Byron has a lot of potential. So I just don't think there's any room there.
Yeah, there's no room there. So if we move down a run or two, something that would be insanely, I guess not controversial, but
unexpected, maybe.
Unexpected. Maybe there would be a very big uproar. But what about a move to RCR?
I don't even have RCR as an option. I think that they, I think it's already been shut down. They're not going to pay as high driver salary. And RCR, we've talked with them a bit. They have Creed that could go cup racing if Reddick dips out in 2023. They have Hill. We brought up Noah Gragson. I think those are all better options for what RCR wants to be than to put Kyle Busch in there. The other Chevy
we should put them in the 3 just to piss all the Dale fans off.
It would be funny. We could bring the prophecy true for one race of that M&M's 3-car meme that goes around.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's the best option, the most intriguing, maybe not the best option, but the most intriguing option definitely, and the best one with Chevy probably is Colleague. Because these two have got the perfect mindset together. Matt Colleague and Chris Rice, they don't mind putting their own companies on the cars, and I'm sure he could sell a little bit of sponsorship to help with that. And they're both the biggest thing for Kyle Busch and Colleague Racing is they want to go trophy hunting. They want to win as many damn races as they can. And I think that, Colleague obviously this season has not quite been there at the Cup level. Even at the Xfinity level, they've been worse because of this Cup thing. But, if Kyle Busch has some faith in the program, maybe he gets some operational control, maybe a little bit of an ownership stake in the team. You have a full prospect pipeline now coming up. If you have KBM move over to Chevrolet in the Truck Series, which would be kind of nuts. And, I think you put sorry, I lost my train of thought there a little bit, but I think the Colleague is controversial. Maybe they're not quite ready for him. Maybe you end up seeing a Keselowski type of thing where he's not quite as good. But Kyle Busch still has a lot of good years left. I think he can turn a crappy. He bitches about his race cars all the time and says, this is the worst thing I've ever drove. He's running in 3rd place, running down the lead.
Right. So Kyle is 37, correct?
Say that again?
30. I think Kyle's 36 or 37. Right?
Around there, yeah.
Prime, as we know from listening to Motorsports Analytics for a couple of years, is the age 39 season. So his best season is yet to come. He may have fallen off the last couple of years. It's interesting that you brought Colleague up. I don't think that that's a possibility just because of the pay. But
I think that they will throw more money at him than they can necessarily handle because they want trophies and they're willing to do anything in their power to do it. I think they would downsize their Xfinity team. Maybe they'd help out a little bit with the trucks. They wouldn't need that development pipeline in Xfinity. They can throw Daniel Hemrick's ass out the window. Whatever they do with Allmendinger, I don't know. Maybe if Kyle Busch doesn't go to Colleague, I'm wondering what he will do. Whether he'll come up full time to Cup, stay in Xfinity, whatever. But I think that if the possibility is there, if there's even the slightest little bit of, hey, maybe Kyle Busch will come race for us, they will do everything in their power to make it happen.
So we both went around today in a lot of different areas for a lot of different drivers. But I think that just sitting here listening to you talk, I've been plugging in holes, putting wires differently. That meme where we've got the whole map behind us and the red strings or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't think of I can't think of what TV show that was from, but whatever.
Yeah, Charlie Day and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's got
that's what it is. It's Always Sunny.
I'm
right here right now because everything is starting to make sense. Because when you said AJ Allmendinger, I was like, wait a minute. They're going to have someone drive full-time for that team or yet again put Daniel Hemrick and AJ in a bunch more races because Noah is currently filling that seat a lot. Mm-hmm. But since Ty is leaving,
I just don't think that it makes sense for them to run 3 different drivers in that
right.
seat.
But since Ty is leaving the 42, and we think that could be a place for Noah to go as well, if he fills that seat, the 16 is empty. Mm-hmm. That actually does make a lot of sense to put people with a very similar mindset together and make them dangerous with Matt Colley, Chris Rice, and Kyle Busch. You just turned me on that one.
See, I don't know that it'll happen because Kyle Busch may look at this and say, you guys aren't ready. I need to win more races. And so this brings up my last option here, and we can come back to the Colley thing. But Stewart-Haas Racing has been brought up as an option now.
Yeah, I think this is the most likely one.
Yeah, not necessarily even in the 10, because that could be a natural option, and you could screw Ryan Preece out. We don't even know that Ryan Preece is going to be in that 10 or if Almirola is even going to retire. But this is something I've brought up even on the back road and in between media, even though it's more of a fantasy-guided show. Cole Custer's performance just has not been there. And he's in the ride because his dad, Joe Custer, was a big thing over there at Haas, and, he's helped start that team, build that team up. So Cole Custer, and he did really well in Xfinity. He deserved that ride and has done nothing except for one good restart at Kentucky to warrant staying in it. He doesn't bring sponsorship. He gets chicken cock whiskey on the car for one race, and that's the only sponsor I can think of that's not been Haas on that 41. So even if they're okay with doing that for most of the races, you'd rather have a guy like Kyle Busch in that car than a guy like Custer. And Cole Custer, you could easily bump him down. You could, if this involves bringing KBM trucks over to Ford, you could bump him down to the truck series and have him be a truck lifer or do the John Hunter Nemechek role. Maybe have Riley Herbst become a truck lifer or expand to a second SHR Xfinity car and put Cole Custer there and say, hey, try this again. We'll see what happens. Maybe he jumps to that Petty GMS 42 car. Who knows what ends up happening, but I think it's a very viable option for Kyle Busch to go there too.
Yeah. So I think I've been kind of on the 10 train because Eric is supposedly retiring.
Right. That would bring. I mean, I like Eric Almirola. He's a nice guy. He's a decent driver. He's able to win. It would hold back Stewart-Haas Racing if he were to stay there. He's got a limited upside. He's getting older. It would only be to bring in the Smithfield money. But if the Smithfield money is willing to stay even half as much as they are with Almirola with a guy like Preece, I think you put a guy like Preece in there. Sign him to a 2-year deal. If he sucks, bring in another prospect. If you get Kyle Busch in the 41, you've got a few different prospects you can move up and acquire that could come in that ride.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want Preece to go anywhere. I think he's got the talent. I think we've seen that from him in the Xfinity Series. We've seen that from him even driving the 37 in JTD Doherty. He's got the head on his shoulders to be a really good race car driver. And you said Cole Custer could be out. I just don't see that. So maybe you're right, but
I know
not
family ties there and everything. He just hasn't performed. You can't have a stable of cars with a guy like Kevin Harvick competing for wins with guys like that, and then have Cole Custer. I'm pretty sure that he's still only 6 points ahead of Michael McDowell, and McDowell just got a 100-point penalty, and McDowell's racing for a Ford team significantly worse than Stewart-Haas. You can't let it go on that long.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. Based on precedent, you can't let it go on like that because that 41 car did a little bit better with Daniel Suarez behind the wheel. in his 2 years. So
it's
I could
the
see
best
that.
thing in the world that Suarez, he's won a race. He's got a team that's great that's going to build around him because he just got screwed 3 different opportunities in a row.
Yeah.
And so it's so great that he's doing what he's doing.
So, yeah, I guess you might be swaying me on that one too. My thing with KFB to Ford is I think this could be the biggest sway for the sport, period, because of Kyle Busch Motorsports. Mm-hmm. Chevy has the most money in the sport at the top level. They kind of have a decent pipeline with Xfinity and trucks, but they don't really need to because they've got the notoriety in the Cup Series where they're just picking and choosing guys from other lines, like the Eric Joneses of the world.
Right. Like imagine Eric Jones being as dominant as he was in trucks and Xfinity and say, hey, in 5 years, he's going to be in a Chevrolet for Richard Petty. So.
Yeah. But, I mean, at this point, we can come to expect some of that stuff because Joe Gibbs has nowhere to go except for Whale. Now they got 6 seats with Bubba also left the Toyota stable to go elsewhere and stuff like that.
If we're talking about stuff post 2023 as well, that's when his deal is up there. And not that I think they're going to be in any hurry to push Bubba Wallace out, but it's another one of those things is if that 23 is becoming one of the better cars in the garage, you see whoever's in the 45 or Tyler Reddick lighting it up and winning races. You see Gibbs still winning races and Bubba Wallace is still having trouble. You know, it's one thing if he's bringing in all the sponsorship money, but I don't think he will be. I think Reddick is going to get those deals. Can you keep him around? Is his performance going to warrant it?
I think Bubba's got sponsorship money just based on his charisma, I would say.
I think it could be a case type of fans that he brings in. I think that softens his landing. I think that he ends up with a decent team. Let's say maybe he goes back to whatever Petty GMS is. Maybe it's some other team that we don't know of yet. Some other seat that we don't know is going to be open. I think that can soften his landing, but I don't know that he can keep a ride that's so far in the upswing if the performance isn't there. And I think he's got the potential to do it. But if it's not there, it's the same thing as Custer.
I would argue that the performance is there. And we've seen that this season as long as we don't have 9 different pit road penalties. So I don't think Bubba's got – I think Bubba is probably going to be a substantial length of time in that 23 seat. I doubt that he or Daniel Suarez, who those two teams were kind of basically built around, are going anywhere as far as that. But to get back to the Kyle Busch thing, I think for Toyota, we've talked about how big of a loss it would be for KBM to be leaving. But I think for the sport, we could have a new, I guess, explosion in the Xfinity series. I feel like if Ford understands what they're doing, they bring their Xfinity program back with KBM, and KBM does not run trucks anymore following this season. I think that would be the best thing.
I do see KBM keeping one truck around just to kind of rotate things because I don't think Kyle Busch will ever stop running the truck series. I think he loves it so much. But, I mean, Ford right now they have one competitive car in Xfinity, right, and it's Riley Herbst, so you can barely call that competitive. As far as I remember, they haven't had anybody new because there were those few years where they had Briscoe and Cindric and nobody else in the Xfinity series.
It's just a 98 car. So if you
need more competitiveness there. So I agree, bring him up.
The series needs it. I mean, honestly, there's just not really. We call it the best series because there's a lot of good racing, but there's not really any parity as far as manufacturers go in that series. So the series needs it the most. So I think if Kyle does leave, I would want him to go to SHR for the possibility of strengthening the Xfinity series with at least 2 more cars and bringing the 98 under the same KBM fold. Now, if they split their resources, they have 3 trucks. They could do 1 truck and 3 cars now with SHR backing. So I think if Ford's smart, they do that. I think they pay Kyle what he wants, and I think they pay Kyle to bring his truck team to the Xfinity series.
Yeah, if they have the manufacturer support, it's going to be so much easier for them, for sure. I think Kaulig would be the most fun just because it would, he could go out there and win 8 races and finish 25th in the rest of them in a Kaulig car. And it would just be insane.
And win the championship just to spite everyone. That would be pretty fun. But I guess, do we have anything else that you wanted to talk about? We went through all my points.
Yeah, definitely nothing else quite as crazy. I don't know if you have that list handy, the post 2023 guys. There are a
Okay, yeah,
few. We mentioned Harvick and Truex. I think they're both out after 23. They
absolutely.
both retire. I don't know who takes their seats. I didn't quite get that far. The other names I think were on that list: Blaney, Busher, Bell, and Eric Jones. I don't think that any of them go anywhere.
Yeah, I think they're all sitting everywhere. The only person that I do think could be on a chopping block, he might be getting lucky just because we possibly could see up to 3 Toyota drivers that are currently at Joe Gibbs be gone with a potential retirement from even Denny Hamlin. I doubt that he's going anywhere, but if it happened, that'd be solidifying stuff for Bell. But Bell, I think, is the only one that could be on a chopping block because of history with that 20 car.
I really hope Gibbs has learned their lesson and they're not going to throw him. They're not going to throw him away, especially because Kyle Busch could be out at that point. Truex is going to retire at some point. Denny Hamlin is going to go race for his own team. I don't know when, but at some point it's going to happen. So I think if you throw Bell out for somebody, I don't think it makes any sense.
Yeah, but we also said that for Eric Jones, and he got booted for Bell.
Yeah.
And then even Logano, they kicked him out right before he exploded. Yeah. So
he's the other name that I think he's up after 23. I don't know that he goes anywhere, but he's starting to get to the age and maybe the level of performance. I don't know that Penske will boot him because they don't have anybody in the pipeline.
Right.
Because Ford has no presence in the Xfinity Series. Penske has not fielded a car there once this year. Is he cool driving there longer? Is he going to want to try to find a future ownership role like Keselowski did? It could be worth looking at. I think that maybe we're talking about the next deal for Logano. Say he re-signs for another 3 years, and then maybe after that we start to look at that. But
it depends on. He's got a growing family. They've got 2 kids now. He seems like a very good dad. I don't know that he doesn't have a couple more kids and calls it quits after his next deal. He could be someone. He's been racing in the Cup Series since he's 18. Mm-hmm. Maybe he does a more traditional open wheel style career and just races for a little bit and be done. But you're talking about he came in 2010, right?
09.
09. So we're talking about already 18 years by the point of him finishing his contract next year and extended 3 more years. Why stick around that much longer? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, and that goes for a trend just in NASCAR in general. Guys like Kyle Busch could just retire and just not be racing anywhere next year.
Yeah.
Because he's been doing it for so long because they've been coming in so young.
He's got nothing left to prove, too.
Right.
He's got the most wins of anybody in the affiliated series.
He's got to win a Daytona 500. That's the only thing he's got left.
Yeah, but I don't know that hangs on him as much as it did with like Dale Earnhardt. Okay. Maybe it does, but there hasn't been any signs from him that's eating away at him that he hasn't won a 500.
Right. It's not a real racetrack anyways, right?
he could live with that.
So, but I want to talk about Blaney, though. This is something that we had in our group chat with, the other Fan Fuel hosts, and there's a distinct divide between the 4 of us, with half of us saying that Blaney's going to be the next hot prospect and the other half saying that he's going to be a lifer. So I do want to ask you to decide that for us, to be the winning vote. Is he going to be the next hot prospect next year at the end of his contract, or is he going to be a Penske lifer?
I'm going to say a Penske lifer. He's been there. He's done well enough. He's got the sponsorship money. I just don't know if anything better opens up. There's very limited opportunity to jump up from Penske, and I just think he's content there and he sticks around there.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, but there's some opinion that the Cindric situation could pry him from his roots at Penske. So that was the only real question.
What about Austin Cindric would take Blaney away? I'm curious. I don't know.
Just the way that they don't like each other. Period. That's just it.
That's interesting. I don't know that it's
because one is the son of the president of the company, and the other one is Ryan Blaney. And they do not seem like they're very good teammates, based on one of them. And
Yeah.
Ryan has visibly complained, or I should say, vocally complained multiple times to where, even out in the public, we know that they don't have a good relationship.
That's a fair point. You were saying I convinced you about a couple of the Kyle Busch things. You might be convincing me, but I mean, where does he go is the question.
SHR. I think Ford would not want him to go. And you persuaded me that Custer might be leaving.
If we're talking about post 2023, you'd have the 4 open as well.
Right. So you could have him
go to Ford camp and
go to me.
Potentially there.
Yeah,
that's juicy. I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So
all right.
Other than that,
SHR. SHR looks completely different in 4 years. Let's go.
All right, and then you got the next one I'm really thinking about that could be spicy. Because we've talked about him 3 or 4 times in the show, and that's Alex Bowman and the Ally sponsorship.
Right.
So I guess this goes to see what is the culture of the sport now compared to what it used to be. Mm-hmm. Are there in the next TV deal, is it going to make us be available for more talent over more buckets of money? Because I think the only reason that some of these guys are in the Cup Series is because of their sponsorship or because of Danny's pocket. And with you and what you've talked about already with Bowman, he's probably locked down because of Ally.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're saying that his deal's up as 20 at 23, I don't know. I'm almost certain they'll resign, but if not, what happens?
The thing with Bowman, and this is even with me being a Bowman fan since he's come into the Cup Series, Ally holds all of the cards for his driving career. In 2020, he had a few races from Exalta, and then they had to go with the Chevy Goods B2B sponsorship to fill the rest of his races. So he basically didn't really have sponsorship. He had like a Cronus for a race, he had planners for a race. He was plucking things the same way that the 24 car is now, essentially, with this Raptor here and Valvoline here and a Cronus here and this, that, and the other. Ally holds all the cards for him. I don't know that he definitely doesn't get a bigger partner. Ally is at this point probably the last, hey, we're going to sponsor every race for you, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to support you, this, that, and the other. And I think Ally likes the relationship. They came with Jimmy Johnson first, and they liked him when they were sorting out all the stuff with Hendrick. When Jimmy retires, they're like, hey, Bowman doesn't have any sponsorship. We kind of like this guy. The chief marketing officer at Ally is a huge race fan, huge Alex Bowman fan. But we see a lot of times these companies is those things change super quickly. I don't know where I heard this, something like that, but these chief marketing people, chief financial people at companies last an average of like 2 years. Yeah. So if these people at Ally that are really supportive of NASCAR, really supportive of Bowman dip out, it could really put him at risk. And I think it could be a situation. I mean, at this point, he's got pedigree, he's got talent, he's got Cup wins. He's not a driver that's only there for the money, but he's also kind of a driver that's mainly there for that sponsorship. And it could be a case where they say if Hendrick wants to go and put somebody potentially better in that car, because I'm again, as a Bowman fan, I'm even saying this, you can get guys with a hell of a lot more upside than Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman will get you consistently a win a season. You're in the playoffs. You have some bad times. You have some good times. You're going to be around potentially in the thick of things. Is he ever going to win a title? Probably not. I think the biggest upside for his Cup career is Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman won a few races, contended pretty well, won a Daytona 500. Was he ever a championship threat? No, but you knew he was there. So I think that a team like Hendrick, as good as they are, they could find somebody with more upside and switch to them, and then it's just a matter of what Ally does. Do they pull out of the sport completely? Do they stick with Bowman and go to JRM or somewhere else? Or what happens then? So it's Ally holds all the cards. Bowman could find an okay ride without money, but not a top ride.
Yeah, I think he's in the same spot as Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is right now. He's got the talent.
That's super interesting because JTG is just kind of doing it for fun at this point. They've talked about getting out of the sport. They do have the money there with Kroger and all that stuff, but he's only competitive a couple of times a year, and Bowman would have to drop to a level around there if he would lose that.
And he's got to find someone who does have the financial backing. So that would be another one like Colleague or Spire who can put forth cars, maybe even a Rick Ware Racing. I
don't necessarily know that he'd have to dip that low. I mean, it depends on a whole bunch of different things, but I think if he were to be given the choice of go back to a crappy backmarker team or try to do something in Xfinity or even go run sports cars or go run dirt racing that he would just kind of dip out. Because remember, unlike a lot of these hot prospects, he's had the experience of being in a shitter at the back of the Cup Series before. Tommy Baldwin and BK Racing. That I don't think he wants to go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does depend on what his presence as a sprint car owner and stuff does. I mean, you're right. It could potentially be a Casey Kane type deal where he just goes and runs dirt. So, yeah, I could see it. Really,
as I want him to stay on that 48 for good. He said that he never wants to leave Hendrick Motorsports. He wants to be there for his career, but the possibility could happen just because that's
So Rick Hendrick put his cars in the hat for the young drivers, and that's been very fruitful so far with a Chase Elliott and a Kyle Larson championship. However, I don't know that the William Byron and Alex Bowman side of the shop are going to continue to be able to put forth efforts like that. Because even you said at the beginning of the show,
I'll let you finish.
4 wins last year where he only really earned 1. William Byron pops off a couple wins this year, pops off a couple wins every year. Is that enough for Rick Hendrick to sustain over the long haul? Because, we saw guys like Casey Mears who could win a race here and there get booted out for other people and stuff. So I don't know.
It is interesting because, of course, you want that championship upside. But are you really going to have 4 cars with championship upside year in and year out? We've seen it with Gibbs, sort of, but even then, they've really only had 3.
Realistically, it could be a potential pipe dream, but I would say I would want to have at least 2 of my cars in the Final 4 and all 4 of my cars in the round of 8 every year. If I'm a Hendrick Motorsports,
that would be great. But Hendrick. Maybe they won't be okay with it to realize that maybe people will pop up and they can say, hey, this guy has more upside. But the Hendrick Dream lineup, they had, within a few years, they had Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and then Mark Martin, and then Casey Kane. I don't think you could build a better lineup in the Cup Series at that point. There's maybe 2 other guys you would sub in. Yeah. And Jimmy Johnson was the only one to come close to winning a title in that era. And he did, obviously. But Jeff Gordon didn't win a title after the very early 2000s. You never saw it with Dale Jr. You never saw Kane reach what we thought his true upside would be. And Mark Martin, came that close, but lost it in his one good year to Jimmy Johnson and then faded because was old as dirt,
Yeah.
And because keeping 4 super competitive cars is extremely difficult. The 5 car got the worst crew chief and the worst crew at Hendrick Motorsports when they did that big crew chief swap. So I think this is almost the dream. The fact that you can have all 4 of your cars winning races year in and year out and being competitive. Not that I don't think Byron ever wins a title. I don't think Bowman ever wins a title. The fact that they're in the conversation, though, that maybe that's the great thing about this playoffs is that in a year when you can hit all the right spots, you could win a title even if you were the 17th best driver in the series.
Great is a relative term. Yeah,
I think it just matches so well with other sports when the best team almost never wins the championship, and we've always had this purest view of auto racing as you need to be the best over these 36 races and things like that. But this playoff system, it makes things more exciting. We would have years. I was only really watching when the Chase era started, so you didn't quite ever have a championship wrapped up until that last race, or very rarely in the second to last race.
I will hold that
every single race gets the viewership up, and that's what NASCAR needs.
It doesn't matter
for sure, but
it doesn't matter. That's the thing. If the racing is good, it doesn't matter if the championship's wrapped up. And that's the only reason it does is because it's been played up over the last 2 decades. Otherwise, the finale would not.
If we were to watch this
race, keeps getting worse and worse and worse ratings, though.
And it's tough because I think if you're going to do this, you need to rotate it. You can't just have the same tracks in the playoffs every year because then it is not a true whoever plays the playoffs that well, it wins the championship. If it's at Phoenix every year and you have somebody who's terrible at Phoenix, it's like, well, I was the best driver. I made the Final 4. I suck at Phoenix. I'm not going to win the title unless there's something crazy really happens. Yeah. So I think it works to continue to rotate that race. But imagine if we pull up the driver points right now, I think Chase Elliott has a very commanding lead in the points right now. people
Yeah,
would
but we
already be
still got so
disinterested
many.
because of that. People would already be disinterested. And if we would have a situation where somebody, I think, like Kevin Harvick in that dominant year, without the playoffs, he probably has the championship wrapped up with 3 races to go. And I mean, it's, again, the auto racing purist is like, hell yeah, this guy had a dominant season. He won 9 races, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But think of how bored we would all be. Think of, would we even bother to watch those last few races? Well, this guy's already won the title.
Nobody watches the last race anyways because it's fake as shit. Listen, I think I'm the most excited for this year's playoffs that I've been since they've been inactive. I'll go ahead and say that. I hate it because I'm like really excited because anything can happen. But I also think that we need to tweak it because having a winner-take-all finale is fun when it happens maybe once or twice a decade. Now it happens every year, and I think that's my biggest drawback. For people who don't know, we have a website. It's called fanfuelmotorsports.com. This season, I will be taking an idea that's a collaboration between myself and Diecast Char from NASCAR's subreddit, $/NASCAR, called the Wild Card Playoffs, and it's the one thing that I think would be able to fix the playoffs, and that is we run the round of one race at the beginning of the playoffs and not the end, and all 3 of the following rounds would be 3 races. That's the only fix that I think would make it so much better.
So you're saying in this case that you start the playoffs with 4 drivers, or that
no.
The first race you whittle it down to 4. How does it?
It's a wild card round.
Oh, I see. So 1-3-3-3 instead of 3-3-3-1.
Right.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So for Darlington, let's say, in my opinion, the top 10 in points are an automatic lock, just like the original chase. They get a first round bye. Any winners and up to 16th in points, or any winners, like if there's 18 winners in the regular season, all those drivers fight for 2 spots in the round of 12. And they have to do it in one race. And that fixes it for me.
Yeah, because if you're going to have the one race fluke, it may as well be in this wild card round,
right?
Than to say somebody blows a motor and loses the championship because of it.
Right?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing is it would never happen. But I like that you lock in the top 10. Any race winner is in this wild card shot, so you don't have to worry about
a minimum of 16 drivers. So that's a minimum of 6 drivers.
So you lose 10 of those, but then if you have a ridiculous season like we have this year, where we very well could have 18 winners, they all get their chance to be in the playoffs, so to speak. Then you have that. It's the top 2 finishers, I'm assuming, of those 8 or 6 or whatever that we can get.
And then it's by points based on every 3 rounds. That's it.
Then you have 12.
Person with the most points at the end of the last 3 races out of the final 4 wins. So I think it would make everybody happy. You still get the crazy race 2 weeks in a row, Daytona, then Darlington, for last chance to get into the wild card round. Let's do this the right way.
Then how do you? Is it still a situation? So it's no longer a situation in these rounds then where if you win, you're into the next round. It's just straight points.
No, it's the same until you get to the final round.
Okay, so just in the final round, it's just points. Okay,
right. And then you, he suggested, because we've been going back and forth on how we want to tabulate this. He suggested not having playoff points in the final round. I think you should, but maybe it's only playoff points earned in the playoffs. I'm not sure.
That's a really good compromise. I think that the playoff points you've earned in the playoffs, you get to take like you would not from the regular season.
Right. So that would be for the last round. So that's the only thing. We got off on a tangent about the playoffs, but yeah,
that's all right.
It's been a hell of a show. It's been fun. We were going to do something even more fun, but we had a couple of hosts dipped on us. So we'll have to get you back on to do the other part of the silly season show that we had planned, which was What If, kind of fell on our What If series. X did or didn't happen. So, for example, I was going to bring up what if DW never left Hendrick Motorsports. So that'll be a show that I think we should have you back on because this has been really fun, and I'm sure the guys would have a lot of fun with you as well. So I appreciate you coming on. You have anything you want to plug or anything before we head out?
But yeah, I've had a lot of fun too, for sure. We'll have to get back on for that. And that was, it's kind of good that we kind of waited on that. Darrell Waltrip leaving Hendrick happened so long ago. It's going to take a little more research for me to kind of get on to what this would happen and that would happen. So that can be more fun to look into. I was probably going to go down the Dale Jr. tangent, whether he would stay at DEI, go to Gibbs, that sort of thing. It's all been well hashed over, but it's still fun to look over. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun here. I'll have to come back. You can catch me on the back road. We go every other Tuesday night. For In Between Media, you can follow me at Hicks39 right up there. That'll take you to the In Between Media account. I can't remember the username off the top of my head. I think it's IBT_media, but don't quote me on that. I've got a column Through the Field that comes out in the opposite Tuesdays or the opposite Wednesdays. So every other Wednesday we got a column. Every other Tuesday we got a show. Myself, Seth Woolcock, Rod Villagomez, and we have some guests on. It's a lot of fun. Come check us out if you want to focus on the fantasy and sports betting side of NASCAR.
Yeah, and those are the guys to follow about that. They'll give you just who you need to know for the upcoming races to pick to make yourself a little bit of money. I got to get on that. I've not started betting yet.
Yeah, we had a guy on a couple of weeks ago he calls himself a professional NASCAR bettor. That's how he makes his living basically, and does extremely successful. Has got a podcast that's promoted by NASCAR itself. So yeah, we get the big dogs on.
Okay.
We have a good time.
All right. Well, go and support Elliott and his crew over there In Between Media. And, of course, if you're not following us on all our socials, follow us on Twitter, on Facebook at FanFuelMSM, capital F, capital MSM. Check out the website. It's a little bit light right now because I'm in the process of moving, and my work schedule is something I'm really getting used to. The other guys are pretty busy with school and whatnot. But we'll be throwing right back into it here in the next few weeks, coming up with the playoffs. So head over to fanfuelmotorsports.com here in a couple weeks to see some really cool content. And then other than that, we'll see you next week at 7:30 on Wednesday, just like always. Thanks for watching. All right.